Hey friends, and welcome back to the Alex Makes VR podcast. In today's episode, I'm going to be diving into something that I'm just feeling a little bit inspired by today. It's based on the subject, what is the future of VR storytelling? That's what we're all trying to figure out, right? Like all of us interested in creating creative, narrative-driven pieces of work in virtual reality. We are all trying to envision what the future of this is, because we all agree there is a future. We're just not really sure what it looks like. So I'm going to dive into my predictions and my general thoughts on the subject in this episode. If you've got a subject or a question that you want me to explore in future episodes, then reach out. I would love to hear from you. Alex Makes VR on Instagram and Twitter. I'm also putting out a really regular newsletter, which kind of covers all of these topics in short, little, concise bites. If you want that delivered straight to your inbox, you can sign up to the newsletter at alexmakesvr.com. So, the future of VR storytelling. I feel like I've covered some of this in a previous episode. In fact, it was episode number 7 where I talked about what I think the immersive industry will look like in 5 to 10 years. So if you've not listened to that episode, maybe go back and check that out. That is my high level thoughts on my predictions, I guess, for the overall immersive industry. And it's funny, right? Because we're in an industry that changes so much. We're discovering new things. New technologies are constantly coming out. The hardware's changing. We're seeing more and more activity around social VR, for example. Apple has made some quite big acquisitions over the last couple of months. You see Facebook about to launch Horizons, which is their version of Ready Player One's Oasis. We're seeing a lot of stuff happen in the general overall immersive space. But what about storytelling? What about us creatives? Where's the future for us? What is VR storytelling going to look like in the future? Now, unless you're Mystic Meg, no one knows, right? That's the whole point. That's kind of the weird fun of it, is we all agree that there is some future, but we're not sure what it looks like. We're in that messy beginning where everything is up for grabs. Everything has to be trialed and errored. Everything has to... trialed and errors, that's the wrong phrase, isn't it? Everything has to be tried just to see whether it works, to see what the reaction is. And the difficulty is we are definitely still in that phase of the medium where everything's a bit novel. So you could kind of do anything in VR storytelling. And because it's so new and exciting, you're definitely going to probably get some of that novel feedback of the fact that actually a lot of the times, if it's someone's first time in a VR headset, they're probably going to be blown away as long as the thing that you're showing them isn't shit. So we're in that weird bit where we all agree there's a future, but we're still in that bit of we haven't tried everything yet. So we're not really sure what does and doesn't work in terms of VR storytelling. And obviously VR storytelling is such a generic term because that encompasses everything, right? I mean, my version of VR storytelling is very different to what, I don't know, someone at Atlas 5 considers VR storytelling. There's seems to be anyway, and this is complete conjecture, but theirs is, and if you don't know who Atlas 5 are, by the way, they are one of the biggest VR distribution and production kind of studios in the world. They are behind some of the biggest titles that have sold at Sundance and premiere at all these big fancy film festivals and then go on to be distributed on the Steam and Oculus stores as well as arcades worldwide. So some of their titles, for example, are Spheres and Gloomy Eyes, and their version of storytelling looks very different to my version of storytelling. I'm more interested in kind of character-driven, quite passive, first-time experience dramas created usually in 360 video. Their version is high-end, CGI created interactive pieces, still with story at the heart of it, still with the narrative and the whole point being, for the piece to tell a story. That's still the same, but the way that they achieve that is very different to the way that I achieve that, which is wildly different to the way that you might achieve that. And it's not to say that anyone is right or wrong, because again, this is it's a spectrum, really, isn't it? Essentially, if you're telling stories in VR, then you are a VR storyteller. But where does that leave us? Because, I mean, we can all agree what is a film. We can all agree. Now, of course, within film, you've got different genres, different lengths, different styles. It will appeal to different people. But within VR storytelling, it's not even like, we don't even know what to call them. It's like, do you call it a VR film? Do you call it a VR? It's not really a game, but do you call it an experience? All these different kind of capture technologies, the way that you experience them is also different. It's just a complete shit show, really, isn't it? And part of that is quite fun, because we are part of the group of pioneers shaping that, which is quite exciting. But at the same time, where is it all going to go? So I've been thinking about this a lot recently, because I am someone that really, really enjoys creating experiences for a first-time user. I like creating quite simple VR storytelling experiences that don't have a lot of interaction. And I want it to be able to be seen in a group context, usually by a first-time VR audience. That's what I get excited about. Those are the kind of stories that I like to tell. But there are so many hurdles and challenges that come with that. And in my heart of hearts, I don't think that in 5 years' time, we're all going to a cinema and putting on VR headsets on, or whatever the version of cinema is in the future. In my heart of hearts, I don't believe that we're going to go to a cinema and put on a headset and sit there and experience a piece of VR passively together. Now, that might come as a shock to a lot of people, because that is at the core of what I do. But my belief is the next 5 years, we will have those experiences. We will put on those cinemas. We will go to VR arcades. We will create these group showing experiences. But eventually, we will get to the point where the kind of VR storytelling that is commonplace will be that hybrid between film and game that we're all constantly toying with and teetering around. As much as I love passive VR storytelling, which is how I would kind of categorize what I do, because 360 video, generally, you can't interact with it that much. It's a passive experience. You're not making active choices. I love that. And I think there is absolutely a space for it. And I think it's important, because it is those kind of first-time experiences that are going to get people into our ecosystem. But in 10, 20, whatever years' time, I think VR storytelling will look similar to the kind of idea and the kind of the way that someone might play something like Dungeons and Dragons. That's right, we go in nerdy on this episode. So I've never actually played Dungeons and Dragons, but I do listen to a hilarious podcast by one of my favorite comedians, who basically the whole podcast is them playing Dungeons and Dragons. And what they do, and the reason I'm so fascinated by it, is because the dungeon master, like the person that heads up that game, is the storyteller. They are the world builder. So in this particular podcast, for those of you who want to check it out, it's called Not Another D&D Podcast. For those of you who don't know, like, there's basically, you know, a dungeon master is the kind of the person that creates the world. There are certain rules, I think, like with any game, because I think you would consider it more of a game than anything. But then it's up to the dungeon master to create the universe, to create branch narratives, because that dungeon master is constantly reacting to what the players do. So they can't know what the story is ahead of time. They have a vague idea of where they want to take it, but they have to kind of be responsive and reacting to what the character's doing. And the more I listen to that hilarious podcast, the more I think that is the future of VR storytelling. The future will be this kind of, this responsive, reactive story. It will be branched. It will be active. It won't be a passive experience. And I could be wrong. Obviously, these are totally my predictions. And obviously, this is coming from someone who loves, and is the core of my business, is doing some of those more passive experiences. So, you know, it's not like I've got it's not like I'm doing myself any favors by predicting this. This is just genuinely what I believe to be true. The future of VR storytelling will be those kind of, and I don't know whether that will look like AI. Will the equivalent of the VR Dungeon Master be, which sounds quite kinky, really, doesn't it? The version of the VR Dungeon Master might be like an AI. In 20 years' time, that could be very real. Or it could be a bit like, another kind of way of thinking about it is like, when you're a kid and you play games with your friends because you're just using your imagination, whether it's, I guess it's kind of like a version of LARPing, isn't it? Like live action role playing. Like I remember I used to do so much of that with my friends as a kid. We used to pretend to be the Spice Girls. I went through a phase of being absolutely obsessed with Dragon Ball Z, and so me and my friends would pretend to run around pretending to be like Super Saiyans. Anyone that's listened to my TED Talk already knows that I was obsessed with Xena the Warrior Princess. I used to play that game by myself. I used to like run around the house pretending I was in storylines in Xena, like, and like that wonder, that imagination that you have as a kid. That, I think, is as close to what VR storytelling is going to be in the future. That's as close as I can kind of like really describe it. I don't really know. Like I feel like the future of VR storytelling is something that I can't even really put into words, but it's most similar to basically the imagination, the role-playing games that you would play as a kid. I think that's where this all goes. Now, don't get me wrong. I feel like VR and AR or whatever it is in the future will still be very kind of, it will be a massive part of everyone's lives. You probably will go to group showings of things. Most likely, VR and AR will be this kind of layer on top of an event, or for example, you might go to a cinema and you might already be wearing your Apple glasses or whatever they are. And maybe you have this extra experience on top of the cinematic experience. So maybe you're seeing the film, and a bit like what 3D glasses were, maybe certain things like pop out and they like walk around the environment. Or maybe you're at an art gallery and, the art is coming to life and it does surround you. Or maybe you're at a music gig, and again, like if anyone's seen the I think it was it 3 or EE did like a big showcase at a fashion show about like 5G technology. And as the models were like walking down the runway, you could see these like big animated like features kind of like coming out like from the stage, and like fire like behind like the models, like following them, trailing them behind. It was all graphics. It was all in AR. Like that is, I think that's going to be like the future, not necessarily of storytelling, but that's going to be like this add-on experience to current storytelling mediums maybe. But in terms of like, you put on a headset, you are completely immersed in a virtual world, what I think that experience looks like in the future is that kind of like live action role playing, that kind of Dungeons and Dragons, secret cinema, for example. If you think of like anyone that doesn't know what that is, the secret cinema experience is quite a popular one in London, and it's basically where they build an actual world from an IP. So the one that I went to was for 28 Days Later, and you go to like this compound, and the whole, from the moment that you step onto the location, everything is built from that world. So you are all of a sudden like playing a character in this big open world. And again, it's responsive. There are actors walking around that don't know what you're going to do, but they will respond to you. There's like a certain path that they try and lead you through, but you do have choice. You can make decisions. And at the end of that, then you watch the film. So to me, virtual reality storytelling will be the equivalent of that secret cinema experience. And then maybe at the end of it, you would see a traditional linear film. What I'm saying is, I think, and again, I'm just quite inspired. So that's why I'm like rambling about this. But I feel like what I'm saying is that the passive VR storytelling experience, and when I say passive, I don't just mean a 3DOF 360 project. I'm talking anything that involves you just kind of sitting down and experiencing a linear narrative. I don't think that's going to be a thing in the future of VR storytelling. I think it's going to play a very, very important role over the next 5 to 10 years to get people into the medium. I think it's going to be really important to see some of those experiences achieve on a very high level to get people to take VR storytelling seriously. In fact, just yesterday, I found out that some colleagues, I say colleagues because everyone in the industry are basically friends and colleagues, aren't we? We're all just one person removed from each other. But I was literally just in Brazil last year with the guys at Arvory in Sao Paulo. And they literally yesterday just won an Emmy for a project that they were showing me in their studio just last year. The first primetime Emmy to ever be won by a Brazilian company. Absolutely outstanding. And how exciting is that we're seeing these huge achievements, this huge recognition for our industry? Because when one of us succeeds, all of us do, because we're all playing the same game. We're all trying to create this space where immersive is taken seriously by the mainstream. We're all trying to get more people into the ecosystem to understand its power, because I think we can all agree that when you do experience VR storytelling for the first time, it is mind-blowing. It is mind-blowing. And that's really exciting that we get to be a part of so many people's first-time experience with that. But as we grow, as we get more people into the ecosystem, my personal prediction is that we will shift. We will shift so that in the future, VR storytelling will be much more responsive, reactive. It will be a combination of maybe, I don't think it would always have to be social, but even if you're not playing with other people, and I say playing, isn't that interesting that even the language around it changes? You're no longer watching something, you're no longer experiencing something, you're actually actively doing something, you're playing, you are living your 5-year-old fantasies. Even if you're not playing with real humans that are characters, maybe you're playing with other AI characters. It's going to be bonkers. We're all going to be actors in the future. I'm excited. Isn't that funny to think? Even that is quite an interesting notion. All kids are actors. All kids like play their own games and imagine themselves as dinosaurs and jumping over lava, and every kid like plays in this space of like acting. And then it's really funny because when you get older, being an actor is like this choice of career that most people go, oh, I don't know how you can do that. And it's like, we literally all did that. We did that until society told us not to do that. And hopefully in the future, those kids will grow up and they will never have to grow out of that. They never have to grow out of that phase of having a fantasy world and an imagination. They can just literally let it run wild. So anyway, those are just some of my 20 minutes worth of thoughts on that. I would love to hear what your predictions are for the future of VR storytelling. Reach out to me. Genuinely, I would love to hear from you. Alex Makes VR on Instagram and Twitter, or you can send me an email, alexmakesvr@gmail.com. If you enjoyed this, or if you enjoyed any of the other episodes, and if you've not listened to any of the episodes, please dive in. Got a lovely little back catalogue awaiting you, my friend. If you enjoyed any of the episodes, I would love it if you take 5 seconds just to follow or subscribe on the podcast platform that you are listening on right now. That would be amazing. If you are listening on Apple Podcasts, give me a cheeky little rating if you wouldn't mind. That would be lovely. And as always, have a great day wherever you are in the world, and I will speak to you soon.